My name is Pieter Kwant, and I've been involved in the book trade for some 45 years. For 25 of those years, I've been a publisher. And I've worked in sales for the IVP UK, and I worked as a publisher at Paternoster Press, as its managing director and publisher. I've also run my own publishing company, Kwant Editions, and still operate the Kwant Agency, which is a literary agency, and representing a number of academic authors and also a number of popular ones. For the last 20 years, I've worked 4 days a week for Langham Literature. I started Langham Publishing, which now publishes some 50 books a year, most of them academic and most written by majority world authors. And majority world is defined as the majority world in line with the majority where the world church is in the majority. So the majority of the church is in that world. So I do know something about how publishers think. I sell to them, I buy from them, I also am one. What publishers dream about are great manuscripts submitted by amazingly cooperative authors who have written the right books for the market the publisher serves. Books that will scratch where the market is itching. These dream books, written at just the right level, are neither too long nor too short and can be sold for a good price so that the publisher can do more than just break even or even have a profit for a change. Most publishers dream about publishing a book that will make a difference in a world overloaded with mediocrity and mediocre commentaries and books. I just give you a little example here. I'm doing a study on Revelation at the moment, and I've been reading an enormous number of commentaries on Revelation, and I found out that about 90% can be discarded almost immediately because there are scholars that haven't done their homework. They just haven't studied the book, and they aren't willing to even look at the presuppositions they're making. So as a publisher, studying these books, I think this is a waste of time. And so you need to be careful that in this day you write books that really are significant and that in which you do your homework and in which you come to the right kind of conclusions. Now, publishing has come a long way. In the old days, the publisher made all the decisions. In this new day, technocrats make all the decisions. And we are following. They set the agenda and we follow. Technology has made a huge difference to publishing. In the past, authors had to find some way to get past the gatekeepers that were there that you had to go past if you wanted to get published at all. And now there are many options. You can go to many publishers, many formats. You can publish on the web. You can turn your manuscript into an ebook. You can get your writing peer-reviewed in all kinds of journals, in open source journals. And you can work with an established publishing house or a new style of publishing house so you can self-publish. So all these options are there for you to choose from. So why bother to go to the hassle of getting your book published by an established publisher? Well, the answer is reasonably simple. One answer is because the market is flooded with books. Your book will have far greater credibility if it's published by a publishing house that has built up credibility and credibility of quality. And such a publishing house will also help you as the author with good academic editing and peer review. And you can never write a good book without being properly edited and rewriting. So another option they may offer is on-demand printing, which has revolutionized academic publishing by eliminating the need for large warehouses and keeping a lot of expensive stock in hand. This technology has become more and more mainstream, and some of the newer publishers, including Langham, we print all our books on demand as a matter of course, even if we do a normal print run as well. Authors publishing in the majority world have got a few challenges. They have similar options, of course, but with some unique complicating factors. There are established publishers in the majority world, but most of them still focus on print books and do not offer electronic formats, which limits their range of distribution. And very often they don't do it because there is so much piracy. So like, I have one wonderful example of a Ukrainian publisher who published a theological book, and on the day he published it, he sold one copy, and that was all he ever sold. Because it was pirated, everybody had it, and that was it. So they've learned not to put it into the public domain like that. But moreover, they are all under huge pressure from Western publishers competing in the markets and often selling books by high-profile authors at very low prices. This is the publishers in the majority world. Combine this with a limited local market and often people that believe that everything from the West is best, and you can see why majority world publishers are struggling. Some who want to publish just Christian materials have found it impossible to survive, and others have made difficult choices and focus on more popular books, with the result that academic books are sidelined. That's the first category that goes. So we find many majority world authors publishing in the West. Unfortunately, this means they're also being edited in the West. And very often all the nice contextual bits are edited out. Some traditional publishers in the majority world have tried to continue academic publishing by charging authors to publish their books, by forcing authors sometimes to buy large quantities of their own books. And they have a better excuse for going this route than any Western publisher does. But still, the model fails because the focus is simply on producing books. And when you've paid the publisher has no interest on how many he sells after that. That's only your concern. And so that's a problem. Normally, we say, if you have to pay to get published, you are probably with the wrong publisher. Now, as academics, you will get a lot of correspondence from all kinds of publishers who offer you the world, who offer you 50% royalties and goodness knows what. And I would suggest that you don't respond to those kind of emails, because they are the kind of publishers that want money up front. They want the money and then you carry all the risk. A publisher who has already paid has no incentive to market your book. And despite all the marketing hype, such publishers will not work to make sure that your book really reaches the target market. So how do you find the right publisher? Well, when you as an author are looking for a publisher, you may have to do a bit of research. And this research starts with just one simple thing: reading. Lots of it. But as an academic, you read, of course, a lot, but both for work and hopefully for pleasure. This is a good preparation for good writing and reading as widely as you can. So have a look at the books that you read and who publishes them. You will start to get an idea of different publishers' emphases, the types of series they publish, their level, if they can get a big academic conference like ETS, SBL, AAR, where many publishers showcase their work. Make time to chat with the commissioning editors and try and find out what different publishers are looking for. What are they looking for? Get to know the publishers and discuss any ideas you have early on. Can I just ask you, start the process with the publisher before you write the manuscript. It'll save a lot of time on everybody's desk. Commissioning editors, their job is basically to find authors, either by reviewing proposals or commissioning books, and this is the person you really want, this is the one you look for, this is the one you aim for, and you send your proposal to. And this point is particularly important for majority world academics, because publishers normally publish from the West, they would not go and look in a majority world for authors, so you have to make the approach the other way. So here are some other things to look out for when you look at publishers. Not all publishers are the same, and not all publishers have the same reach. Now you need to realize that the world is quite big out there, so you need to find out where you think your readers are. And if your readers are in the majority world, then you need to make your decisions accordingly as to which publisher you choose. If you want to go to an American publisher, don't assume that every American publisher's got worldwide access. They don't. And don't assume that the British publishers can do that. That does not necessarily follow. And you also need to look at price levels. Most academic books sell at quite hefty prices. I have one lovely case where a publisher published one of the doctoral theses of one of our scholars, a 3-volume doctoral thesis, and it sells for 450 euros. And there is not a single library in the region where it comes from that can afford it. So the book is not available locally. So you need to find out beforehand whether that is what you want. Do you want it available in the whole world and so forth? So that is one of the problems you face. And of course, there is also other languages. You know, some of you may, sorry, you may want to have a look at what language you want to publish in. What is the reach of every publisher is the basic question. And sometimes that means that you may go to 2 publishers. So, you know, they're very often, I deal with North American rights in North America, and then I have English or rest of the world rights. And sometimes within our own sphere, we often get the rights for the majority world from publishers because they have no way of reaching the majority world in an effective way, and we do. We got connections with many, many, many hundreds of libraries in the majority world, so we can make things available in a way that they can't. Language, don't assume that the only language in which you can publish is English. There is a market for books in French, Spanish, Russian, Chinese, Hindi, you name it, there is. In Langham, we deal in many other languages, and we encourage authors always to write in their own language first. In my discussions with African scholar Kwant, he would tell me that he always does all the theologizing in his own language, which is Twi in Ghana. And then when he's done his theologizing, then he translates it into English. But that means that he doesn't have to go through all the critical rigmarole of the Enlightenment and everything else. He can just write straight from his own background, from his own tongue, and he then can present those materials to the rest of the world. Now, you need to remember that we have different types of books. A type of book, well, what book are you wanting to publish? Not all publishers handle all types of books. So there's a PhD thesis. Some academic publishers have monograph series. But there are a number of serious publishers that expect you to pay for those. Avoid those, I would counsel. Academic books for the tertiary market, both popular and serious academic publishers may be interested. Book for the student and the pastoral markets, go to the popular academic and theological book publishers. And I can, in the time when we have questions, I can give you some of those examples. I'd rather not give them in this lecture as is. Now, one of the questions that normally doesn't come up in people's mind is, but do you need an agent? Now, I represent quite a lot of theologians, and they have found that really rather helpful. So why would you use an agent? Well, I would say the best thing is, yes, consider it. And some of you may not need it. Others say, well, you could use it. Those of you who are scholars in the majority world, you could use Langham Services as your agency. We give that possibility, and we can help you find publishers and connect you with the right people or connect you with the right networks in whatever you want. So why contact an agent? Well, agents concentrate on helping authors find the right publishers. So they've done all that works of finding publishers they've done for you. They also know all the gatekeepers. They know exactly who is who in the publishing house, and they go to the right person immediately, which is quite important because you don't want your proposal to go from desk to desk to desk to desk. So they take over much of the publisher's correspondence, contract challenges, and the negotiation, and also the administration of royalties. So what types of agents are there? There are quite different types of agents. In America, agents very often come out of the legal profession. So they are experts in how to put a contract together, and that's very useful. and particularly in societies that are very litigious, you really need to know that you got the right contract and you got the right people, the right agreement. And there are also agents that operate in a large range of literary markets. That would be the case in both America and in England. You have agents that concentrate on general markets and sometimes cross over into the Christian markets. So somebody like Eugene Peterson, who later in life became really a hot property, he would have an agency looking after all his needs. The man wouldn't have been able to sleep if he hadn't had an agent. Because it created so much work and so much activity. So if you get a big name, I work for one or two big names, and you work your socks off because they write a lot and there's a lot of correspondence, there's a lot of things that need to be generated, and so it's much easier and you sleep much better in having somebody looking after your affairs. In the UK and the majority of the world, there are few agents for the Christian academic markets, there are hardly any. This is where organizations like Legum come in handy. They can provide an agency service for you. And I would say also, I'm getting at the age where I'm very happy to help anybody. And if you have any questions, you can just write me an email. And at the very least, I will give you an answer and a way to start exploring what you need to do. I get those kind of emails every day. Many academic publishers send their commissioning editors to institutions and conferences to commission books from potential authors. In those cases, the author's agent looks after the contract and the royalty negotiation. So one of my authors sits down with a major publisher. They make a verbal agreement about writing the book, and then my author says, oh, by the way, from now on, it's my agent's job. Here's his email, can you please contact him, and I look after all the rest. I do all the negotiation, I drop the contract, I do I'll handle the payments, I negotiate everything. And with the agreement of the author, in some cases the author, after a few years of working with you, they say, well, it's your problem, I don't want to know about it anymore. In other cases, we go step by step, and the agent is always there for the author, and always on the side of the author. That's the important thing. How much does an agent cost? Well, it depends. There are agents who charge up front, and they have a service package that you pay for. I don't operate that way. I operate the way that if I don't make any money for my clients, I don't want any money either. And so I work on the principle that the moment a project starts making money, then a certain percentage comes to the agent. Those percentages differ. My percentage is about 15%, but some agents may charge more and maybe some charge less, I don't know. But that is on the net revenue on royalties. And so if you don't earn any money, I don't charge anything. And so that's quite a good relationship, and it works for the author. Now, the big thing is writing a proposal. I can't tell you how important it is to write a proposal. And very few people do it well. First of all, you need to think and know who you're writing for. Now, that sounds obvious, but of course, when you write your doctoral thesis, you only write for number one. And I'm afraid that number one normally remains number one in books that follow. The worst people are that tell me, oh, my book's for everyone. There are no books for everyone. They don't exist. You can't write for everybody. And if you are, then I think you've got a major problem. So don't do that. Define your target audience carefully. Do it, there are many ways of doing it, but you're writing for the male, the female market, or both. Are you writing for the educated, the uneducated? What kind of educational level are you writing to? And so forth, and so forth. And then you set in your mind a certain person that you're writing it for. And then you start a process of writing your summary. What I'm always looking for is a summary of about 250 words max. I use the word abstract here. I'm not really looking for abstract. I'm looking for something more marketing. I want to be sold something. You've got to sort of get me excited here. So it needs to be something that immediately explains, and I know exactly what you're going to do. That's the basic. I want to know what you have in heart and mind, and I want to know exactly what you want to do. And if you can't say it in 250 words, you're not going to be able to say it in 5,000. And you can't say it in 15,000 or 100,000. So you have to basically get that message very clear in your mind as to what you want to write about. And then you need to propose a title and a subtitle. And I'll give you a little secret here. The title and the subtitle are the kind of things that are used by all the search engines. And the better your title and the better your subtitle, the more likely you are to be discovered on the internet. It's as simple as that. And they also need to be truthful. So it's no good giving me a title and it's got absolutely nothing to do with the book. So normally the title is the thing that catches you. You know, that's really nice. So I've got a nice title for a doctoral thesis. It's called Mangoes and Bananas. I will never forget it. What a great title. And then he had a subtitle explaining what it was all about. And the subtitle always have to explain just that. What is it about? Then thirdly, you have, or fourthly here, you have a chapter by chapter outline. And what I mean with that is just one sheet. Put all your chapter headings there and just give me one line. Maximum 2 lines. And that's all we need at that stage. And then a sample chapter will be useful. And the sample chapter, I want you to really concentrate on one chapter and normally don't do chapter 1. So do chapter 3. It's a good number. Do chapter 3 or chapter 7, an even better number. Whatever you like, but take any chapter except for chapter 1. Then you need to give me proposed word count. And here is the trick. The moment you commit yourself to a word count, we take you at your word. Simple as that. I know one publisher, my author was given 80,000 words, and he wrote 87 or 85,000 words, and the publisher sent it straight back to him. Said, please take the 5,000 words out. I was surprised, but he did, or they did. They take that seriously. And the reason why it's so serious at the moment is that most books are published on demand, and whereas in traditional publishing you paid per 8 or 16 pages, now we pay per page. And the per page price is quite significant. So any page you can have less in your book is more profit, because normally it doesn't make any difference to the selling price. Then you've got to sit and think, and you've got to do some hard work for our marketing men and marketing women. And they would ask you, well, what's so unique about your manuscript? Hasn't it done before? You know, has somebody already done this? Do you know who are all the competition? Who's done all this? And then you have to sort of situate yourself. And this is a very important discussion. It helps you not to duplicate what others already have done. And the publisher normally knows what already has been done. So you're just confirming what we normally probably know. But we want you to do it anyway, because we want to know how your manuscript is different. And if you can't convince us that you're doing anything particularly different, we tell you to find another proposal and do another idea. So we're not into duplication. If something has been done, it's been done. And there are 2 reasons. You know, you either write something brand new, a great new idea, or you write something that has been written about a lot of time, but man, you just got the right angle. It's amazing. Now people will really see it. You use a new metaphor, you have a new idea, whatever. That's what you want to do. And then after that, we want you to introduce yourself. So after you got me excited about the title and everything else, you need to explain to me why you are able and qualified to write. So I need a CV, and I normally like to get a photo on the CV as well, so I've got a bit of an idea who the person is. In the old days, we got handwritten letters I could from the handwriting normally work out who the person was, but those days are past. And now we just get all the same letters. And I like a photo, and I can see sort of who you are. But concentrate in your CV on your publications so that I know, so that I know what it is you've done in the past and who you published with. And if you have never published before, don't be embarrassed. You know, that is not a problem to us. Now comes the hard bit, and that is, how do publishers read this proposal? And the first thing I have to say to you, we read it very quickly. And we take just on 5 minutes to decide whether this is worth going with or can just be torn up and put in the bin. Now, that's why it's so important you write a proposal first and not a whole manuscript, because I can evaluate a manuscript in 5 minutes too. And that is a real problem. You worked on it for 2, 3, 4, 5, 10. I've got a manuscript at the moment. The author has worked on 35 years. So it's really hard if I just say, hey, you know, go home, go and do it again. You know, it's not really the thing to say to somebody who's been working that hard. So please get this proposal in first. The next time we read it is we read it slowly. After we decided this is interesting, we read it slowly. And we then we're looking for the particulars that confirms our initial gut feel. And we then, with the best proposals, are then shared with our colleagues. I've got a number of colleagues that go straight there. And they come back, and if they agree, then it goes to the next step. If they disagree, I normally take their word for it. Ever so now and then I argue my case, if I really think that I was right. But not often, because this is a team decision. You know, we got to publish together, and the whole team needs to be on board, and if the whole team is not on board, you as an author are not going to be served in the way you ought to be. So it then goes, normally in the bigger companies, it goes through the editorial department, then it goes to the marketing department, then a publishing decision is made somewhere along the line, normally within 3 to 6 months. And that may feel a very long time for many of you. So to shorten the heartache and the headache, I normally give the authors a bit of an indication as to where I think this is going to be, what we're likely to decide. And then there's the peer review. And here I plead with all of you, a personal plea. You know, we all need peers. And peers do it out of the kindness of their heart or out of the kindness of their academic hearts. But basically, they do it, and they do it pro deo or pro bono. And that simply means that we lose the ability to give them real deadlines. In actual fact, in our company, we don't talk about deadlines anymore. We talk about resurrection lines. It's far more appropriate. But seriously, a peer review is absolutely essential for us. And if you, when you're writing your proposal, if you can give us some names of people who could possibly be peer reviewed, we don't necessarily follow that up, but you may give us some ideas as who would be willing to have a look at that, or who is a master in your field. And all peer review is anonymous, so we will never tell you whether we did or whether we didn't. But basically, it may help sometimes the process, particularly for majority world scholars in very obscure historical kind of situations. It's very often a good idea for us to know who are the experts in that field. I'm doing one manuscript at the moment, and that manuscript, it's so specialist that I think there are only 2 scholars in the world who could comment on it. So there's not a whole lot. So the nice thing is that I know they will say yes because of its speciality and because there's so little in their field. So the next thing that I would argue is that if you are already at the stage of being a peer and being asked to be a peer, or if you aren't, please make yourself available to be a peer. It's the hard blood of academic publishing. So please be kind to us in allowing, well, rather kind to your colleagues in making those reviews available to us so that we can, in turn, have the certainty that we're publishing the quality that is required to give our publishing house the cachet of, yes, we can trust you. Now, we come to another little subject, which is, well, it just never, ever fails to amaze me how many academics are willing to sign their lives away with their first publishing contract. It's unbelievable. I have seen them sign things, and it's not just academics, mind you, it happens to many first-time authors. But they're so keen to be published, they'll sign anything, and they normally do. So please don't do that. Don't just sign anything. Contracts are agreements at the very basic level between you and them. And a contract that has been, the contract terms, you can talk to a commissioning editor and they tell you, well, these are the terms. You then still need to check up that when the contract actually comes, that what you think you've discussed with the commissioning editor is actually in the contract. I've just had a case now where an author, and I asked the publisher specifically in 2 emails not to include a certain clause, and then the author, when it came now, it always comes now in e-format, so it's quite difficult to see, so we just signed it, and then when I looked at it afterwards, I saw they just jolly well let that clause still in there. And so I wrote immediately back to him, we wrote an addendum, and it was all sorted. But if I hadn't been awake that day, he would have signed something that I think would be detrimental for his next book. Because it was a clause giving them the final option, the first option, and the final say in his next book. Well, publishers are all different, and so you don't want to connect yourself to one publisher if you're planning to do another type of book the next time. So be careful. So don't sign away your copyright, don't sign away the rights to future titles, read the whole contract carefully yourself and get a second person to read it or get a professional to read it for you to highlight any problems. Be careful with any completion clause. Be careful with, competition clause, sorry. If you many scholars, they write their thesis and then they think, oh, there's at least 3 monographs in there, and there's another 2 books in there, and so forth. Well, some contracts forbid you to do that. So make sure that clause ain't there. And if it is there, discuss it and make sure that it doesn't hamper you in doing other things that you were planning to do. Make sure that there is a get-out clause. Make sure there's a date that you can get out of the contract. Don't sign these eternally lasting contracts. If you can get away with signing a non-exclusive contract instead of an exclusive, go for non-exclusive every time. Now, your mainline publishers wouldn't do that, but some of the other publishers will be willing to do that. Now, check the regions to which the contract applies. So if you sell whole world rights, make sure that they actually can cover the whole world. And if you sell them ebook rights, make sure they actually do ebooks. Because if they don't, then you can maybe go and sell that ebook somewhere else. So be a bit savvy. Don't sell yourself too cheaply and too quickly. Check the actual rights granted. Do they include foreign rights, TV rights, film rights? Oh, you think, well, this book's never going to be a film. Well, I tell you, I know some books that were never going to be a film that became a film. And by that time, it's nice for the author to know that he's got all the rights. So academic books never sell the TV rights. Not necessary. But, there are mainline authors and mainline scientists who have been put on film. And you know who they are. So that is one of the keys as well. And then one of the big things is check the contract for all the charges you are liable for. Those kind of things, to be a clause like this. Well, when we get the typeset proofs back, and any changes above 10%, you pay. It's quite a normal standard clause, and you may be willing to sign that because you know you're not going to make any changes. That's fine. But if you're the kind of author that has got 25 bright ideas after the book is in typeset state, then you may want to think again before you sign that. So all I'm saying is just be careful and be alert. Now, the big thing that you need to remember, you need to remember that everything, and I mean everything, can be negotiated before a contract is signed. After it's signed, there is no negotiation, only obligation. That signature actually makes a big difference. So, be careful to put that jolly thing down. That's my advice to you. When you're using an agent, the agent will point out all those clauses to you, and in many cases the agent negotiates the contract on your behalf. The publisher is taking all this aggro out of the system for you, which is one of the services offered. Now, Langham offers these services to many of our scholars. We actually offer this service to them and make sure that they don't sign anything that with promises they can't keep. Now, another area of great confusion is royalties, revenue, and advances. What can you expect? Well, it really depends on your standing and how much the publisher is wanting your manuscript. The rates differ a lot between the US and the UK and between Europe and the majority world. It makes a big difference in many cases. Now, first, a note to Western authors, and that goes for quite a few of you. Don't, out of your kindness of your heart, pay for the production of your book through a majority world publisher and allow it to be distributed there royalty-free or even free of charge in some cases. Doing this creates unfair competition for local authors who try to get published through that publisher and make it almost impossible for them to get published. And this has happened so many, many times. And please don't fall for it, because the net effect is that relevant books by authors speaking to their local context cannot get into print. So the really useful books, the audience never sees, because we have to read the not so useful books from the West, because they may not be so useful in that particular context. Rates. Royalty rates in the UK vary widely, anything from 5% to 14% on net sales or retail sales. And while in the US, they normally start by about 10%, going up to 20, sometimes even 25% on net sales, and mostly net sales. Royalty on print books tend to be lower than ebooks, which can go up. My standard ask is always 25% on net revenue. Now, you've got all these terms. You need to be really careful. What is the retail price? Is obvious what the retail price is. That's the price a book sells for on the cover or in the bookshop. That's it. Then you have the net invoice value. That's the value that the publisher invoices the customer, and that may be at a discount of 35%, 50%. In America, it can be as much as 70%. So you think you're getting a big 15% royalty on net invoice value, and you look at your book and it's $10, and you think, wow, that's going to be amazing. And in your head you think, oh, there's going to be $1.50 a book. No, it's going to be 15% or $3 or $4 or $5, whatever they're selling it for. And net revenue is even worse, and that's where all your marketeers who are trying to make a fast one, they use that very often. But in the on-demand industry, we use it all the time as well. Net revenue is the difference between what you actually are paid for the book, what the revenue is of the book, and what the book cost. And it's the difference between the cost and the revenue that gives you the net revenue. So that's quite a lot less. And then we're talking very often pence and pennies. So please read carefully how these contracts are written. Now, I've just signed a contract. I've just been negotiated a contract with a French general publisher, And that contract was 28 pages, and the royalty section was 5 pages. That's like a lot of pages. And what you get is you get a royalty and then get all the exceptions. And you get all the things that they don't pay and all the things that they do pay. And to be very blunt with you, if I didn't read those things at 8:30 in the morning, I would fall asleep every time. It's really difficult to read those things. But you got to, and that's, you get paid to do it. But what I'm saying is they can get quite complex. So be careful what you sign. And don't do what all of us do, when we buy a new Apple computer, it says, first thing comes up, screen comes up, do you agree with all the terms, and how many of you really have read all the terms? Well, my wife has, but most of you don't, right? You don't. And you just tick it, because if you don't tick it, you can go and take the machine back because it won't work. Now, that is not the kind of attitude you should have to this kind of contract, please. Read it all. And so self-publishing offers, please be wary of publishers offering you a royalty of 50% or more. Such offers are normally based on net revenues and are not as good as they seem. I've just had a customer who was going to pay $8,000 to publish his book. $8,000. And he wrote to me and said, Peter, what do you think? I think you're a fool. And I had a look at it, and I showed him what that contract was all saying to him. And he's still very grateful to me for pointing that out. He now can publish his book, and all because he wants to self-publish. All he's going to have to pay is an editor and to edit his book, and then the book is fine, it's ready, and that's all it's going to cost him. And that'll be a charge of about £300-400, and that's it. So there's quite a difference between £400 and $8,000. So please be careful. Don't let your ego get the best of you. And I really mean that. Don't think the world needs your book so much that, you can do shortcuts like that. Don't do it. It's not worth it. And I can tell you this too, that if he had gone that route, they would have smiled from ear to ear and they wouldn't have done a thing for this book. They would have done what they contractually are asking to do, but that's it. So don't do it. I hope I put you off that one. Now, the thing I don't want you to put off, I want you to put on this one, and that is working with an editor. Editors are my greatest friends and greatest asset. My favorite editor I've been working with for the last 35, 40 years. And we know each other inside out, and it's amazing. What an amazing partnership. I could not have been the publisher that I've been if it wasn't for her. And that's how it works. Because editors are there not primarily for you. Editors are there for the publisher. A publisher needs an editor to make sure that that manuscript is ready for the market. So the publisher is there also, the editor is there also for the reader. You want to make it read. You may think you say something, but the editor may have some second thoughts about that. And they may say, oh, well, actually, you can put that another way. And I think you should put that another way. Because then you're actually communicating what you thought you were communicating. So please be absolutely certain that you get an editor. Now, because of the expense of editing, some publishers take a variety of shortcuts. Some have abandoned editing altogether. I went to one country where the local publishing house told me, well, we stopped editing books when the last missionary left. Well, that is not the attitude. It really isn't. Your editing is absolutely essential. Some have good publishers spend time editing because every author needs a good editor to produce a quality book. And here's the clue. There's a lot of different types of editing. So there's substantive editing. You make sure that the book is well constructed. That's the kind of editing where you started with chapter 1 and we think, well, maybe you should start with chapter 7. And chapter 1 can go with chapter 4 and so forth. We move all the text around and we turn the whole thing around so to make a more cogent argument. Or we can do stylistic editing, make sure that the text flows well for readers. So we make absolutely sure that what you want to communicate, you actually are communicating. Or copy editing, looking after the details. We look after these, spelling, hyphens, grammar. You have no idea that an editor can get excited about hyphens. It's ridiculous. I once had an email correspondence between two editors about, I don't even know what they're called anymore, but the little, call them hyphens for all I know, but the M dash. Thank you, the M dash. Yeah, the M dash. Where you see how much I learned. The M dash, and it went on forever. I had an email strip from "Have I Got You There?" and I thought, what on earth are they all about? And I didn't have time to spend on that kind of detail, but they got very excited about it. And so those are the copy editors. And then there's proofreading. After we've typeset the book, it then needs to be proofread. And the proofreading needs to be checked. We need to make sure that there are no missed errors. We need to make sure that all the pages are there and make sure that all the pages are following each other. It may sound obvious to you, but it's not so obvious to others. So please don't do what some authors have done to me. When we just have finished typesetting, they send me a revised manuscript. Please just don't do that. When you send in your manuscript, send in the manuscript and that's it. And then when you get it back from the editor, you can do whatever revision you like, but don't do it while the editor is working on it or while it's being typeset, please. Note that the editor is not the final judge of your manuscript. The author and the editor are supposed to work together. And this is very important. It's a collaborative decision making. So an editor doesn't override your decisions. We always go back to the author and say, are you okay with this? Now, not all publishers do this, by the way. So be careful. The bigger the publisher, the less likely they are to do it. And so you need to be quite careful that you have in the contract a clause that gives you the right to actually ask for the contract, or for the edited manuscript. At Langham, we invest very heavily in each Majority World manuscript, and our editorial bills are very high very often because most of our authors, their second or third or fourth language is English. And so there's a lot of work to be done. And that's, by the way, why so many Majority World manuscripts are rejected by Western authors, because they just have one look at it, and even though they like it, they can see the editorial cost go sky high, and they said, no thanks, we can't do that. Editors may send you the manuscript back. Normally not a great sign, but they send it back, and there's a lot more work for you to do. So make sure that during the publishing process, you are available so that you can. I've got one manuscript going through the ropes at the moment. It's got a very tight deadline because of the particular circumstances in which the author finds himself. But it's a very extremely busy author. And so it's really tricky. So he gets notified, in a week's time we're going to send you, and please, you've got 6 days to do this. And then after that he gets, and now in 2 days we're going to send you, and can you please give us a final okay in 2 days in the evening by this and this. So it can be very tight. Now normally in the academic market it's thankfully not so tight, but please be sure, then don't be discouraged. When you get it back and you have a whole Christmas tree and your manuscript looks, and you can hardly find your words, don't get too discouraged. Editors edit for particular markets. This may mean severe cuts in the length of the manuscripts. It may sometimes mean rewriting controversial material, depending on the kind of country you find yourself in. Changing the level of writing, up or down. For us, it's normally the latter. Normally we find that if authors write for pastors, then even their graduate students can't understand it, then you have a problem. So we need to edit it down to be able to make sure that the vocabulary that is used is actually understood by the market for which it was intended. And then Oh, by the way, you also will probably be asked to do quite a bit of rewriting. So when you finish the first draft of your manuscript, very often it's a good idea for you yourself to go through it again and rewrite and make the final touches. When you send it, then you may still actually need to do another rewrite. Please don't be too discouraged. This is quite normal. I know authors who've done it anything between 5 and 10 times. So don't be, if you want a really good manuscript, it's going to communicate, it's going to do the job, it's worth it. Marketing and distribution. Basically, the publisher's role is to make the book accessible and discoverable, and make the work known throughout all the distribution networks, through print catalogs, conferences, websites, and email. And also make you and your book known through the various social networks and wherever the publisher has a presence. We put you in our catalogs. Your catalogs go through all the things. We make sure that your metadata are recognized on the internet. You make sure that everybody can find you and can find your manuscript. In Langham, we would publish your book in many formats. We publish your book in print, we publish it in PDF, we publish it in ebook, we publish it in Mobi, and we publish it in another 55 other formats for all or even more, for all the proprietary units. And then we also publish it in Logos. Particularly all the scholarly material is all published in Logos so that it's fully searchable for those who want to use it in Logos. We also work with you to compile a list of people who can commend your books. Commendations are the lifeblood of the marketing department. We really need to know who is on your side, who likes what you write, and who would be a champion for your writing. And the bigger the name of the champion, the more excited we get, because the more easy it is for us to get it known. And it's particularly true of first-time authors. And those of you who are older authors and well-known, please do the kindness to younger authors to encourage them with forewords and with recommendations so that they can get on the stepladder. Very important in our trade, and it's something that is easy to do for you. Provide guidance, or publishers provide guidance on what you as the author can do to market your own book and support you in doing this. And ensure that wherever possible, media and academic gatekeepers such as library buyers and journal book review editors get to know about your book and are sent review copies. So if you are quite a well-known local author and you do a lot of traveling to conferences, it'd be a good idea to give your diary to the publisher and say, look, I'm going to be speaking here, 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 here. Can you make sure my books are available when I'm there? Very simple, very easy, and most of you don't do it. So please do that, because it's really helpful for the publisher to know where you are. And then we can make sure your book is there and make sure you have to sell, that you can sell it. Now, you've got something to do as well, and that is we want you to use your social media and make sure that you connect us to all your networks. You may have a blog. We love authors who got 100,000 plus followers to their blog. That is, man, we really like to publish you then. That's how publishers think, because that's great. That gives us a bigger market, but it helps you to market your material in there. And the other thing is launches. Launches are a bit of a trick. We prefer the author to organize the launch and use the best launches are at existing events. So if you've got an existing event and you're known there, we can maybe organize a launch there. But the idea of a launch is to get the media there. So if the radio, the television, the newspaper, or whatever isn't there, then the launch is merely a bit of an ego thing. It's okay, it's nice you finished and you want to celebrate, not a problem. But for a publisher, it's not so interesting. For us, it's interesting. I've just been to a launch in Egypt and in Lebanon, And we had the newspapers there, we had the TV there, we had the cameras out, everything was on camera, everything was on the TV the next day. That's the kind of launch I like. And that's the kind of launch that sells books, because then everybody knows about your book. So that's the kind of launch we like. Now, that's only for some and not for all. And then you need to help the publisher with finding endorsers and reviewers. Be available for speaking engagements. I've just signed a contract with a publisher where the author signed on the dotted line to make himself available for 5 working days to help the publisher in the marketing effort. And so that was 5 days of your life where they basically put you on stage, and they normally pay for for the travel and for the hotels and all the rest of it. But basically you make yourself available free of charge to present your books to various market segments of the world out there. And then use your personal social media to ensure that all of your contacts know about your book. And above all, please surprise and inspire us. The kind of manuscripts that I like is the ones that I'm still reading. I start at 9 o'clock and I'm still reading at coffee time, and I forget about my coffee, man, that book's going to be published. So if you can do that, if you can inspire me, and then that's good. Now, one last comment in conclusion. I really think every academic, well, you have to publish. Now, you can publish with a grunt and a gripe, and you can say, oh man, I have to do this, or you can do it with a fire in your heart. You can have something, some ideas, and you really want to communicate, they burn, and let that come out. So please envision and ask the Holy Spirit to envision you for every single project you do, that none of the projects that you do become a slog, but that you are in it heart and soul. It's the books that are written with the heart and the soul and the mind that really sell. All the others, forget about it. I'm reading a book at the moment. It's a 2-volume commentary on the book of Revelation, written by a man called Pieter. And it is the most exciting book that I've read for a long time. That man really has stretched my mind, stretched my heart, makes me worship, makes me see connections, and the whole Bible is coming to life. And it's just amazing. And so I'm sitting there hopping on my chair reading this book. And my wife asked me, what's wrong with you? And I said, man, it is so exciting to read this book. Now, that's the kind of academic I like you to be. Somebody who can spark and delight people. That's what we want.